Hey, it's your host, and today we have quail eggs. We call them the gourmet alternative to chicken eggs because they are smaller, they have a little bit more of a chewy texture, and they are just more unique when you serve them up versus chicken eggs. They're also loaded with nutrients and great for salads or appetizers. So let's talk about how to cook them, how to peel them, and all the different ways that you can eat them. Let's get started. The first thing is we're going to talk about boiling quail eggs. Now, this is my preferred method. I like it better than poaching them. First off, it's easier to do and they always turn out perfectly cooked. The way that I like to cook them, it's simple. Just put them in water, cover them up, and bring to a boil. Once they start boiling, then set a timer for 4 minutes. You want to cook them for no less than 4 minutes and no longer than 5. If you cook them too long, they will be overcooked and kind of rubbery inside. And if you undercook them, well, there's a chance that the whites don't fully solidify and they kind of break apart in your hands while you're peeling them. So here's a little trick. Do not overbeat your eggs. Some people think you need to beat them or mix them up before you put them in the boiling water. But you don't. The reason being is the yolk is very easy to solidify and needs less time than the egg white does. So, by keeping the eggs unmixed, you give the egg white more room to gather around the yolk so that it can solidify around it. In other words, you're making a nice little protective case for the yolk so that it doesn't break open during the cooking process. All you have to do is gently lower them into some water. This part is important. Don't just drop them in and make a bunch of noise. Otherwise, they could crack. Just lower them in slowly. Once they're in the water, then cover the pot and bring to a boil. Once they start boiling, then turn the heat down low and set a timer for 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, turn the heat off, drain the hot water, and run cold water over the eggs. This will stop the cooking process and make them much easier to peel. Then just tap them on the counter to remove any of the shells that are loose and voila, you have delicious boiled quail eggs ready to eat. Now, if you've never tried them before, you might be wondering, what do they taste like? Well, they have a very rich and intense flavor compared to chicken eggs. So if you were to eat one raw, you would not be able to finish it because they are so rich and dense and concentrated. That is why it's best to cut them up and add them to salads or maybe serve them as an appetizer where you dip them in some soy sauce or something else. Think of the flavor of the egg as more of a gourmet egg, whereas chicken eggs are a more mild, everyday type of egg. As far as nutrition goes, quail eggs are a little bit higher in protein and fat compared to chicken eggs. They're also higher in cholesterol. But don't worry about it because cholesterol is good for you and you shouldn't be afraid to eat it. The most common nutritional concern is that they are high in salmonella. But honestly, that risk is extremely low as long as you cook them thoroughly. For example, you can buy quail eggs that are labeled as safe to eat raw, which means that they come from a farm that tests their birds for salmonella. Of course, cooking them kills off any bacteria. In fact, you can actually eat the insides of the eggs uncooked if you wish. There are even recipes online for raw quail eggs. Personally, I wouldn't recommend it unless you know that the eggs are fresh and haven't been contaminated. Another question that people often ask is, why do the eggs have a little ring around the yolk? That ring is called the vitellin membrane. It's completely normal and safe to eat. It's the thin membrane that surrounds the yolk. Here's an interesting fact about it. If you look at a wild bird's egg, you won't find a ring, because the membrane is so thin that it usually breaks apart and mixes together with the yolk. Only domesticated birds like chickens and quail have a thick vitelline membrane due to selective breeding. In nature, a thick membrane isn't necessary. However, in commercial settings where thousands of eggs are being collected daily, the thicker membrane prevents the yolks from breaking apart during processing. On the outside, the membrane looks like a white ring around the yolk, but once you cut the egg open, you'll see that it turns into a cloudy, thick line between the yolk and the egg white. You can safely eat it. However, it has a chewy texture that not everybody likes. So if you wanted to, you could strain the yolk through a sieve to remove it. Alright, now let's talk about how to peel quail eggs. First off, you want to use freshly boiled eggs because the older they get, the harder it is to peel them. As soon as the eggs are finished cooking, immediately run cold water over them to stop the cooking process. Next, you want to tap them on the counter to crack the shell. Then roll them around to make sure you crack them all the way around. Another trick is to gently squeeze them because they're so small that you can actually peel them with your hands. Don't worry about getting every last piece of shell off because those little bits are soft and flexible. You can just eat them without any problems. And do not be afraid to use your teeth either because the skin is soft enough that you can easily bite into it. In fact, I sometimes bite into them to get the shell out. It works pretty well. Also, try rolling them over a strainer to remove the shell pieces that are loose. A little tip: store them in a container with some water and refrigerate them. The water helps keep them moist and prevents them from drying out. The colder they are, the easier they are to peel and the longer they will last. All right, now let's talk about how to eat these delicious gourmet eggs. The first way is simply to eat them as they are. These work great as an appetizer. Just slice them in half and add some salt and pepper. I promise that you will love the intense flavor. Another way to eat them is to cut them into quarters. This works great if you're serving them as an appetizer. You can even get fancy and arrange them in a circle on a plate. Here's a fun one. You can make deviled quail eggs. It's basically the same recipe as deviled chicken eggs, except you just use fewer ingredients because quail eggs are smaller. The only difference is that you might need to add a little bit more mayonnaise. Here's another idea. You can fry them. This is really simple to do. Just take a beaten egg and dip them inside. Then fry them up in some oil. You can add some cheese to the top if you want. And here's a fun one. You can stuff them. Just scoop out some of the yolk and mash it up with some salt and pepper. Add any other ingredients that you like, such as chopped chives or bacon bits. Then put the mixture back into the egg white and you have yourself a delicious stuffed quail egg. Another cool thing to do is to serve them as a salad topper. You can chop them up and sprinkle them on top of a salad. They add a lot of flavor and protein. Or you can lay them whole on top of the salad. And here's a tasty idea. You can make an egg salad sandwich. It's just like chicken egg salad, except you use fewer ingredients because the eggs are smaller. Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed learning about quail eggs. If so, please leave a like, and remember, you are just one comment away from being featured on our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.